In the East, and the San Antonio Spurs, Oklahoma City Thunder, and Los Angeles Clippers in the West have the four best records in the NBA. Only now Tony Parker is expected to be out a month with a sprained ankle. So, Jemele, who would have the best shot to dethrone the Heat?
Even with Tony Parker's injury notwithstanding, I'd still say San Antonio. They have the youth, the size, the athleticism, and clearly they play the best precision basketball in the NBA.
I want it to be the Lakers. but right now, I think that because Parker comes back with time to get ready for the playoffs, I'm buying into the Spurs. I don't think you can fake your way to the record they have this season.
In this order, I think it's the Spurs, Grizzlies, and Pacers. But the Spurs on top because size has not necessarily proven to beat the Heat, but execution can beat the Heat, and nobody executes better than the Spurs.
What's ironic about San Antonio is the fact that everybody thinks of their big three and the core of the teams that won the championship. So you think of them as perhaps being an old team, but as you mentioned, they've really mixed youth in very well.
Oh yeah, they have a lot of nice young pieces. Kawhi Leonard, he's been great. They have Danny Green. I think that this team, they're always overlooked, I should say. Every year, I feel like we're having the same discussion about the Spurs. Why aren't more people paying attention to the Spurs? It'll just be interesting to see how they absorb Tony Parker's injury, because he's been their best player all season. If not for LeBron James, he would be maybe the leader in the MVP race.
You know, I agree with Israel. I think the mystery guest to the whole thing, the Memphis Grizzlies, who can play a more physical game than anybody else in the league. And I actually think with the Spurs, people are remembering that series 2 years ago when the Grizzlies roughed them up, and they're forgetting the role that the Spurs were on in the playoffs last year, all the way up to being 2 games to zip up on the Oklahoma City Thunder. If somebody had told you coming into the season that Tim Duncan at his age would play at this level, then nothing that's happening would have surprised you. But plus, they have the best coach in the sport, and I think that will count for something when they do get back to the playoffs.
Even with their winning streak last year, I didn't think they would be able to overcome a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder because they had a great combination of athleticism.
But did you think that way when it was 2-0 in
Well, I thought
Western
that
Conference
before the
Finals?
playoffs started. Well, by the time it was 2-0, I was starting to question it. And this year, it doesn't feel the same way. This year, I feel like they can get over the hump. This is all, of course, assuming Tony Parker can come back and be himself. But it just feels like maybe it's a James Harden effect, or I'm not sure what it is. Maybe it's the experience factor, having gone through what they went through last year. But to me, they feel like the favorite, not just because they have the best record, to come out of the West. And that would be a phenomenal finals, because you've got the two best teams just at playing basketball in the Heat and the Spurs. And if you remember last year, a lot of people thought that if the Thunder would have lost to the Spurs, that the Heat would have then lost to the Spurs because of the role they were on and how well they were playing and how they sort of create problems for Miami. So I think it's the Spurs, but Tony Parker has to be right, and I think they also have to maintain that #1 seed while he's gone.
Well, you mentioned something important in talking about Oklahoma City without James Harden. And even though Kevin Durant is playing at a high level, Russell Westbrook still is too, that team just feels like they're missing something. Now, I'm not completely convinced if they had James Harden that they would be the favorite in the West right now.
Where was he in the finals?
Yeah,
Where was he in the
exactly.
finals last year?
Where was he in the finals? And defensively, they just seem like they have lost something. You know, Ibaka, yeah, he's kind of picked up a little bit because he's got a much more a better offensive game. But I just can't see this team coming out of the West because I just don't feel like they're the same.
The thing that they're missing is the playmaking element that James Harden gives them, because when it becomes the close game down the stretch, Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant can feel free to play the hero ball all he wants because he's that good. But Russell Westbrook does it a lot too, and they don't have anybody facilitating. It becomes easier for defenses. But when it comes to the Serge Ibaka thing, it's like, well, this is the guy you decided to pay. He needs to take another step up in order to be worthy of that guy, because James Harden obviously would have been.
Here's the thing about the Thunder, who, by the way, the best game of the day isn't. I don't think it's Heat Knicks today. I think it's Thunder Clips in the second game of the doubleheader. Okay, here's the thing about the Thunder. Is Russell Westbrook, in his heart, ready to sublimate his own ego at the end of games the way Dwayne Wade has with LeBron James? And that's a question to be asked. The real mystery guest is the LA Clips. And I think that everybody, we've seen them hit their little valleys during the season. I think it's burned into my memory what the Spurs did to them a couple of weeks ago when they just abused Chris Paul with picks and rolls. Okay, having said that, it's not impossible that the Clips could get on a roll because I still think when all is said and done, Chris Paul's still the best point guard in this league in what is, for any place other than Miami, a point guard league.
Well, for the Clippers, though, it becomes a little bit about matchups. Because I don't know, the one thing that concerns
So
me
you
about
think they can't beat the Spurs?
I'm not sure they can beat the Spurs, and I'm still concerned about their half-court offense. Even though Chris Paul is great, who can they go to where you can say, okay?
Well, that's a question. How good do you think Blake Griffin is? I mean, is he playing to his level? I mean, that's a very fair question, right?
The thing with Chris Paul right now, I mean, he's playing like an MVP right now, and I think he's perfectly capable of doing that against anybody else. But I don't think they can beat the Thunder if they match up with them. They have no answer for Kevin Durant. I mean, Caron Butler, who are they going to... He's averaging 33.5 points in 2 games against the Clippers this year, so he's phenomenal. But you're right. I don't think they can go to Blake Griffin late in games. They don't have to. I mean, Chris Paul's that good in the fourth quarter.
You know, this is a great discussion. It's very wonderful for the people in the West, but are we ceding the East to the Miami Heat? I think
Yes, we are. Reading between the lines, yes, I
folks
think
in
we are.
Indianapolis might have something to say about
See, this is a debate show to some degree, and so I don't know if that's actually a debate that someone other than Miami is going to win the title. They're playing at such a high level, and they seem to have kicked it into another gear and separated themselves from the rest of the league. I do not want to dismiss Indiana.
No.
Because they are a physical
No, they
team.
played them a tough series last
They
year.
did. They're a physical team. They certainly have the size, and they have the hate to want to be great.
And they have, I didn't know if emerging star is fair enough for Paul George, which they've got this to add to what they did to the Heat last year. But, boy, I'll tell you about LeBron. You watch him on Friday night. He finally throws in what passes for a clunker with him. And even then, when the game is on the line with Memphis, at the end of the game, they throw him the ball, he makes a three-pointer, and they win again.
14, 10, and 8 is struggling.
Yeah, 14 points in the fourth quarter after 4 points the rest of the game. But Indiana does have size, which makes a difference against Miami. We'll find out. Still ahead.